I'm Lester F. Ludwig. I'm born in Atascosa, Texas, Bear County, just southwest of San Antonio. And we moved to San Antonio when I was 2 years old, and I lived here ever since, except for 40, 45, 46, 47, and 48. I lived in Idlewild, Texas. The town don't exist anymore. And then we got married on August the 12th, 1949, and moved to San Antonio, and we've been living here ever since. We started building our house in 1951, and we got into it in take it back 1950, and we moved in the fall of 1950. It took 21 days to go from San Francisco to Yokohama. We got off after dark in Yokohama Christmas Eve. They fed us a steak dinner. We turned in all our clothes, and they gave us a new issue, except for boots. No, it's got a story on the boots. And then the next, we laid over there about 3 or 4 days, and then we got back on the ship we came over on, and we went around all the south port of Korea and landed in Incheon, and got there late in the afternoon. I don't remember what day it was, but right before New Year's. And we traveled up to our camp where they were holding people over till the people from the unit to pick them up. And we spent a little over, I guess, 4 or 5 hours there, and we was picked up, and then we went up to where our bivouac area was. And we got there, it was New Year's Eve in 1952, and first day of Christmas. New Year's Day was the next day of 1953, and it was snow on the ground, I guess about a foot deep. And we the next day they put us back to work, but it was what it was. The unit had just moved there, and this is what they called east of the Punch Bowl at that time. And the Punch Bowl was a pretty heavy fighting area before we had gotten there. And we had to build bunkers around the tents, and so New Year's Day we were up in the forest and cut logs and slid them down the hills and brought them back there, and we would dig 2 holes in the frozen ground about 2 foot apart. We put uprights, and then we'd put these logs on the inside and tie them with what we call camo wire, which is communication wire, telephone wires. And then we'd fill it up with sand, and we put sand around the post, the upright post, and poured water around them, and it all looked real fine. Then we had more snow, and one of our people there in the unit was pretty much an artist, and he made a snow woman. I mean, she's a real woman. And took a lot of pictures and so forth. And then we done some survey work at that time, but not very much because he was kind of a holiday lull. But then in in about February, we moved over, was going to move over to the west side of the Punch Bowl. So the unit, or the survey crew I was assigned to, was put in charge of going over there and getting the area prepared. And what we did was cut in a new road into a little valley that was formerly an rice paddy, and we had to level off part of the hill for our tents. So we got that all set up, and we operated there the rest of the time I was there. But I was TDY from the campsite or bivouac area for several times. We We served in an area for a R&R camp close to a little lake that was close by.
So during the war, what was your rank, unit, and specialty?
I was a service party chief, and the MOS called for tech sergeant, but we had to depend on what rank come down to the system, and our battery commander wouldn't give it out unless it was enough for all three service parties. So we returned a lot of rank, and after several years, when I got involved with our unit reunions, because we had them every 2 years after we got people together, and our commanding officer at that time, he had noticed that I was going to sponsor or host the reunion in San Antonio in 2000. So he wrote me a letter apologizing for all the things he didn't do it, he could have done, and all this stuff. I told him, don't worry about it. Time passed, and we're doing okay. But I ended up coming home with a Bronze Star, and of course all these other things, medals and things, but the Bronze Star was probably the most significant one. No injury. The only injury we had in our unit was before I got there, one of the members had, on Sunday, had strolled up into the mountain next to the bivouac area, and he tripped a wire on a flare, and he was pretty well injured, and he ended up dying. But that was the only anything that really hurt, except that when the week after I got there, I come down with big bumps all over me, and so went to the doctor and said, well, you had the measles, but you're over them now. Go back to work. And it was below zero at that time.
Were you able to communicate with your wife while you were there? Did you send letters and photos?
Lots of letters and photos, and I called her one time from R&R in Japan, and woke her up middle of the night. I think it was, when did you get called in the middle of the night?
I think so.
And,
it was a surprise.
We had quite a number of changes in the battery commanders, and we had one battery commander, he wanted to go pheasant hunting, so we had several shotguns there in the area, but I and another buddy went with him, and he killed a pheasant, and then we took it back, and he took it to the mess hall, and they cooked it, and the officers got to eat the pheasant, but we didn't get any.
What about the airplane that caught fire when you were flying in it?
Well, when we was coming from Seattle to El Paso, we was in a 4-engine plane, and one of the engines caught fire, so we just landed at Burbank and refueled, and was coming towards El Paso, but just turned around and went back and repaired it, and we stayed on the plane, and finally they got it fixed, and we come on back to Texas.
How big was the fire on the engine?
How
big was the fire on the engine? Just a little
The
slow.
whole thing was cover-up thing.
Scary. Have you ever gotten to go back to Korea?
We thought about it several times, but I came down with a knee that needs replaced, and it's too hard to walk, and everything is. When we were there was nothing. All of those towns and stuff like Wanju, and there was nothing. Everything was destroyed. Even Seoul, when we got coming through Seoul after landing in Incheon, the only thing was standing there was one big building, no roof or no windows or anything, big holes in the wall where the artillery shells did. We saw no civilian life until we got ready to leave down around Seoul, and we caught the train from Seoul down to Busan to leave. And we ended up being lucky enough to get back on the same ship coming home as we went over on. But that's how we got our picture made. But that's the only time we ever seen civilians. We had Korean houseboys, we call them, but do our laundry and pick up around the tent and so forth. And they become pretty good friends with some of them. In fact, one of them that was in our tent, he painted a picture on silk of my wife when she was young, and another picture of our house at home. We still got some of them, and done a real good job.
Tell them about Mount Bounty.
Oh, when we were doing the survey, we established those different points, and we would give them names, so when they run it off on the computer, like hill so and so and so. Sometimes if it was a prominent hill, it was hill number 9 something or 8 something. But the points where we were establishing were we'd free to name one, or we wanted to name one. We had one named after her. I named one after her, and
After my mom, his wife.
yeah, and
He left the service after the war.
Yeah,
They asked
yeah.
him to stay.
yeah, the day I got home from Fort Bliss and had been discharged, I drove back and I got home about 1 o'clock, and the greenhouse that I worked at, it was right at Easter time, so they had just gotten a shipment of Easter lilies and hydrangeas, and so I went right to work that same day.
Impressive. What do you think the legacy of the Korean War is, and the Korean War veterans?
Honored that the Korean people thought so much of us being over there and saving their country for them, compared to like Germany and France and Russia that were on the losing end, and they just more or less faded in the past, where Koreans still pretty much active with our group veterans. So it's pretty impressive.
How do you feel about the quick change that Korea has made from completely destroyed 60 years later? Now it's
Well, when we were coming home and on the train going down to Busan, the Korean kids had items made out of brass shell casings, artillery shell casings, and they were selling them then. I guess they grew and grew and grew. Anyhow, they have really made big changes in there, because there was nothing there when we was there. It just grew from nothing to what they are today.
And they have Samsung refrigerators,
Yeah.
Samsung TVs, Samsung telephones.
Yeah, my son's writes patents, and he's trying to get Samsung to buy something. In fact, if you use a cell phone, everything on a cell phone, he owns a patent on it, and people are infringing on it, but he can't afford to take them to court on it. So
Tell her about how appreciative we are that the Korean country is the only one that has ever
That's what I'm saying.
acknowledged our
Yeah.
veterans.
Do you have any message to younger generations?
I don't think they're as patriotic as we were back in those days. We recall we went, and it started all changing during the Vietnam War, but at that time people had responded to call for action during World War II and continued over in Korea. And, things today are not like they used to be.
Do you have anything else you'd like to tell us?
Well, I've survived to this point. But we, our unit was a auxiliary unit attached to a field artillery unit. Was attached. They were in the 8th Army, but the 8th Army was attached to the 10th Corps, and of course our unit, 8221st, had a sister unit several places over, several valleys over, and they got overrun because that's when the Chinese rolled through and they didn't get the order in time to check out, and somebody lost a lot. But our unit was pretty safe the whole time we were there. It's been a long time. But our unit has the first we was having reunions every 2 years, and then it's come every 2 years. But most of the older people just don't come anymore, or they're unable to come, and some that originally the founders of the unit, they've all passed on. In fact, a lot of the younger guys who was in our unit died a lot younger than what I was at the time. So I was probably the oldest one in the unit at that time. Most of them were still in college. At the time they had military was often anybody that had going to college or qualified to go into OCS, and they kept bothering me, but I didn't want to sign up for the extra years. And
Thank you very much.